Hey, what's going on, guys? So Lords of the Fallen has been released, and yes, I have already beaten the game. I beat it yesterday on stream. Gonna be streaming it again today, doing my second playthrough, this time on PC, so definitely check me out there. But I'm just going to showcase a build for you guys today, of which we used Holy Damage and a Radiance type of build. Now, the build variety in this game isn't like anything too crazy, so there's not really much to cover, but we might as well talk about it. Now, weapon of choice is going to be PETA'S sword, however you say her name. This is basically like the first major boss in the game, and you get it off her remembrance. So yeah, these ones right here, 40 Umbral Scouring. Now for me, it took about like 3 or 4 hours of playtime to actually gather that much. But the sword is definitely worth to grab because, as you can see, not only does it look really cool, but range is really nice, and it's just a short sword as well. Now the short sword moveset is actually pretty decent, both one-handed and two-handed. If you want those poking attacks, definitely go with the one-handed because those heavy attacks do some nice pokes, but I actually like it two-handed better because not only will you do more damage, but those running light attacks are actually really quick. Now I do have it maxed out at +5 because it is a boss weapon and it does get an A- scaling in Radiance, and this gets that pure holy damage as well. And it also gets 100 smite buildup, which is basically just like a big chunk of damage after you just hit X amount of times. Now, as for our rings, there's not really too much going on that's crazy in this game. I haven't really found anything that can really help benefit with like Radiance type builds. I just have a stamina regeneration ring, and I just have one for elemental defense. But as for my pendant, I do have the hallowed triptych, which I don't know how to pronounce that, but this one actually does boost the posture damage of all types of holy damage dealt. Now, unfortunately, this one is actually acquired much later in the playthrough. You're better off just using the Princess's Sting, which you get a lot earlier on. Which this one basically just boosts your damage at just smaller equipment load, so I recommend just staying like at light load and just putting this bad boy on, because you will notice a big difference in damage. Now, as for my spells, I will showcase all of these ones if you just wanted to know. But my favorite ones will end up being Piercing Light, which is just the upgraded version of Radiant Flare, which you get about halfway through the playthrough. Radiant Weapon is definitely another must as well, because this one, it just buffs your weapon, and you actually can still buff this bad boy, even though it is like pure holy damage. Can I do it? There we go. Yeah, it was end up just being a bunch more holy damage, and the buff actually does last a while. I'm pretty sure it's like almost 2 minutes. And I definitely do recommend getting both of the AoE type spells in Sanctify and Consecrate, which one will actually heal you while you're standing inside the pool, and the other one will just damage enemies. So you can just keep stacking both of them, stay in the exact same spot, just gain a bunch of health, and obviously just do damage in the meantime as well. And both these things actually do last a little while as well. Now, unfortunately, if you want to equip this many spells, you're going to have to get a chalice that actually has this many spell slots, which I have the Abyss chalice, which you do get later on in the playthrough. You can just stick with your regular Orion Preacher catalyst, which you do get off the very first guy that can sell it, or off the starting class. Now, in terms of all of these other spells, they don't really perform that well. Basically, Piercing Light is going to be your main damaging option because it has this like infinite range, and it does like pretty decent damage, and you can cast it over and over again, a quicker cast, and it is pretty cheap. The rest of the projectiles don't really offer much of a benefit. This one right here, Briar Storm, it does serve like as a nice AoE, and it does actually do that bleed proc, which obviously makes them take damage over time, but it honestly doesn't do that great of damage, and it's obviously like a longer animation. Well, you can constantly cast it over and over, but you kind of get staggered out of it very easily because there's no like poise or hyper armor in this game. As for Healing Radiance, this one you can actually use it until you actually do grab Sanctify, because the heal itself isn't really that great. It's like a quicker cast, but it barely heals you for anything. Another spell like Radiant Guardian, this one's actually really cool. It just summons like this cool holy turret, but unfortunately, once again, the damage kind of mid, but you can just use it before you enter a boss room, and it's end up doing like a couple hundred damage right off the bat, which I guess is nice, but it definitely really isn't worth using in the middle of a boss fight. Now, something like Blessed Reflections, which you also get off the PETA Remembrance, is actually a pretty decent damaging one, so I actually would recommend this one if you just want single target damage. Now, out of your last 2 spells, this one's definitely going to be your AoE options. So Radiant Slash does actually serve as a nice horizontal slash. I noticed that sometimes it doesn't actually go through enemies, so like you can't really hit multiple people if they're like stacked behind each other. So in that case, I would recommend going with the Divine Arms, because this one will probably end up doing the exact same job, just a little bit better in terms of just having AoE, because you summon these spears and they'll just end up going in a forward direction, or actually tracking towards whatever you're locked onto. So if you're surrounded by multiple enemies, I would recommend just locking off, just using this spell, and it end up hitting all of them at once, and it can do some decent damage. But in terms of a boss fight, I still wouldn't recommend using it because Piercing Light will just end up doing more damage. And one thing I completely forgot to go over is the stats. Now basically, I just went into 20 endurance for your stamina. That's pretty much all you need to really go into. Stamina is pretty forgiving in this game. And I just put the rest of the points into Vitality and Radiance, which means more damage, more health, and more FP, because your Radiance and Inferno stat is tied to that FP. But yeah, there's nothing too crazy going on with this type of build. The build creation and build variety isn't really too crazy. But yeah, that's pretty much all I just wanted to showcase for you guys today. As always, please do like and subscribe. I will have some more Lords of the Fallen videos coming along the way. And do follow me on Twitch because I will be live by the time this video is out, doing my second playthrough live on stream. Anyway, see you guys around. Bye.